What up, Prof Leaders? Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you a little bit more about the Sovereign Wealth Fund and the strength or the value of the Guyana dollar. Now, a lot of the commentary in the news about the oil and gas contract and Guyana's oil and gas industry has come from the politicians and the lawyers, as if this is the only perspective of industry in Guyana. But there is a perspective from the point of view of the mathematician. Now, I am also a mathematician, and so what I've been giving you in my analysis of the oil and gas industry, remember I gave you an analysis of the oil contract. I explained the meaning of the oil contract in one of the first videos about the ExxonMobil oil and gas contract in Guyana. And in that contract was a lot of mathematics, which allowed me to explain why Guyana gets 1 out of every 8 lifts in the production cycle, right? Now, I've also looked at the mathematics from the last report, Bank of Guyana report. Remember, I gave you a analysis of the Bank of Guyana report on the Sovereign Wealth Fund in my previous video. And on further inspection, you can actually calculate the annual production from the report, that is the annual production of oil and gas from the report, as well as you can predict what the output will be for the next 12 months. And so in this video, I want to give you a mathematical analysis of the oil and gas contract with a view of predicting what Guyana will earn in the next 2 years, that is this year and next year, and then tie that in to the value of the Guyana dollar. Why, in fact, I argue from a mathematical point of view that the value of the Guyana dollar should increase. Now let's start with the oil contract. So the oil contract gives Guyana 12.25% of the total earnings. Guyana gets 52% of the contract, of the production. Now Guyana gets its portion of the contract in oil, that is millions of barrels of oil, and Guyana is responsible for selling that oil on the world market. So what we get is the US dollar equivalent for 1 million barrels of oil sold at the going market price. And that means that at the current price of say $80 a barrel, Guyana gets $80 million each time we sell 1 million barrels of oil. In addition to this, we get 2% royalty on all of the remaining oil that is produced by ExxonMobil. In other words, when we get our 1 million barrels of oil, another 7 million barrels of oil is collected by ExxonMobil and its partners, and we get 2% of that in royalty. So that is how the contract works, and this is how the numbers come out. So right now, we have 1.429 billion US dollars in our Sovereign Wealth Fund. Most of that, virtually all of it, coming from the sale of oil. Now, a certain amount of money has come into the contract, into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and a certain amount of money has been removed from the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And when you look at the graph from 2020 to 2022, that is annual production of oil, you can see for each quarter there's an increasing amount of money coming into the Wealth Fund. And starting in 2022, there's a certain amount of money, about $200 million every quarter, that has been removed from the Wealth Fund. But what we can see is that the 4 quarters for 2022, Guyana collected 1.4 billion US dollars. So the fact that we still have 1.4 billion dollars in the Sovereign Wealth Fund, even though $600 million were removed in 2022, it means that all that money was money that was obtained previously in the previous 2 years, 2020, 2021, 2020 and 2021, right? So what that allows me to do is to predict what the contract, what the account, the Sovereign Wealth Fund will contain by the end of 2023 and the end of 2024. Now, based on the numbers from that report, Guyana should earn about $2 billion from oil and gas in 2023. So if you add $2 billion to the current $1.429 billion, you will get $3.4 billion, $3.429 billion. Now in that same period of time, I expect the government is going to withdraw at the same rate it has been withdrawing, about $200 million every quarter. So you can extract, you can take away from that $3.4 billion, you can take away about $800 million. And what you'll be left with is about $2.6 billion by the end of 2023. So I expect that by the end of this year, that our sovereign wealth fund will contain about 2.6 to 3 billion US dollars. And for 2024, I expect a certain increase, a certain growth in the production, the output, because like I said, and the contract declares, there is going to be new production coming on stream, an additional 220 or 250 barrels per day in production from the Payara oil field, and then later on in 2025 another 220,000 barrels per day from Yellowtail, so that by 2024 I expect the production to increase to approximately 600,000 barrels per day, and that means Guyana will earn an additional $1 billion or so, so about $3 billion from oil and gas in 2024. And at this rate, I can predict that the sovereign wealth fund will have about $5.6 to $6 billion. And if you take out, if the government withdraws about $2 billion each quarter, subtract $800 million from $6 billion, and you'll end up with something like 5.2, right? 5.2 to 5.5 billion dollars by the end of 2024. So this is how you can use math to predict the sovereign wealth, the growth of the sovereign wealth fund. So the point is that if Guyana's sovereign wealth fund grows predictably over the coming years, it stands to reason that the value of the Guyana dollar should increase predictably over the coming years. And why I'm arguing that politicians and lawyers should not have all the say, the complete say in this, is because this is not really only a political or legal issue, right? There are lots of other ways to analyze the economics, and one of which is that Guyana, first of all, one, cannot compete for low-wage employment. So we can't build an economy where our going advantage is cheap labor, right? We can't compete with China and Vietnam and India, which has billions of people that they can use to supply cheap labor. We could never win by competing on the basis of cheap labor. So what we have to do is we have to compete like places like the Bahamas and Singapore and Canada, right? So that is where we should be in the short term. Their dollar, that is the Bahamas dollar, is equivalent to the US dollar. The Singapore dollar is about 70 cents, used to be 80 cents US. The Canadian dollar is about 71 cents, used to be about 80 cents US. And so that is where we need to be in the medium term. And how can we strengthen the value of Guyana dollar to that value? Is we need to tie the value of our currency, the value of the Guyana dollar, to the strength of our sovereign wealth fund, right? So that is my idea, guys. The point is that we cannot continue to repress the value of the Guyana dollar. We can't continue to keep it low on the basis that we will attract investment using cheap labor, because we don't have the manpower, right? Nobody's going to come to Guyana to build these industrial zones like they do in Mexico or in China, right? Where there's no Shenzhen. Nobody's building a Shenzhen in Guyana, where American companies will come and manufacture cell phones and electronics, right? Because we don't have the labor, we don't have the supply chain, we don't have the materials. But what we do have is oil. And the way we can use oil is as a form of petrodollars. our oil is equivalent to US dollars because that is what is sold in US dollars. And so we need to be able to tie our currency to the value of our oil. And at this stage, based on the per capita income from oil, in other words, if you calculate how much money Guyana earns from its GDP, from all of its production, including oil, Guyana's GDP per capita is somewhere around 20,000 US dollars per person now. It's growing, right, because of the oil and gas industry. And that is how we need to tie our value, the value of the Guyana dollar, so that Guyanese can compete globally in terms of our purchasing power, right? So that's the idea, guys. Now, the way to do that is to tie the value of the Guyana dollar to the value of our oil and gas industry, so that as the oil and gas industry grows, as the production output grows, the value of the Guyana dollar should strengthen, right? And there's a way to do that. There's a macroeconomic or way to tie the value of our dollar to the oil production. Of course, there are other arguments that people might come up with that are geopolitical in nature. I'm willing to entertain those. If you have any arguments against this idea, leave them in the comments below. But this is my argument. My argument is that you can use math to predict the output of Guyana's oil and gas industry. And because it's predictable mathematically, you can mathematically tie the strength of the Guyana dollar to the value, the petrodollars, the value of our oil and gas industry. That is my idea, guys. If you have any comments below, leave them. If you have any comments on this topic, leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think about tying the value of Guyana dollar to the output from the oil and gas industry in Guyana, so that Guyanese across the board can benefit from the strength of the oil and gas industry. That's my idea. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening here in Georgetown, Guyana. Later!